Welcome to Infinity Genealogy. I am your favorite genealogist, Alia Diani, also known as AD, and I am excited that you all are here. If you haven't already, please like, comment, share, subscribe. I want to emphasize on comment because I love your comments. If you are new to the channel, again, welcome. And this is a space where we learn, unlearn, and relearn. We question. You're going to get a mix of, just my own personal thoughts as well as just reviewing some resources on just Black American history as a whole. So I hope you like what you have. I like what you found. I hope you like what you found. And I also have playlists with different information. So there's a playlist that talks about my brief thoughts. Um, Also, I have a series called Monolithic, which points out us having different origin stories, and we need to stop using absolute language when we talk about our family histories and overall Black American history. I also have just Genealogy 101, US history, and so many other things. And so, again, I hope you enjoy this channel. And so, today we're going to focus on looking at the National Archives.gov website. So the website is just literally archives.gov, and this section focuses on Black American heritage. And so, again, if you're new here, I always use the terminology Black American because we know that many Black Americans do not identify uh, and do not, call themselves African American, especially now that there are so many different groups coming to the U.S. The African American title best fits those who are actually born and raised and have direct lineage to the continent. And so, when you say Black American, you are specifically talking about melanated Black folks who have helped um, build the United States that we know today. So I'm making that clear distinction intentionally because I want to be very specific on the group that I am discussing. But we know that these words are used interchangeably. So there, if I'm just reading from a document, I may just read whatever it says on the document. Sometimes when I'm consciously thinking of it, I will change my language. But even as you can see here, it talks about, okay, here's the title, African American Heritage. But then here it says Black Experience. And these titles are so broad that it can include anyone. But again, the group that I am specifically talking about are those which is, commonly known now as FBA, Foundational Black Americans. So we'll get started. All right. So when you look down here, I just want to review this resource. So the archives hold a wealth of material documenting the Black experience. This page highlights the resources online in programs and through traditional and social media. And so they have archive resources. Oop, I don't want to do that. Okay, let's do that over. So archive resources. They have public programs and exhibits, blogs, articles and links, subject portals, featured records, and then they have a contact. And so some of the subject portals include uh, African American slavery and international slave trade, which we'll look more into, Black Power, civil rights cold case records, migration, voting rights, World War One, and then let's go up here. Oh, it just linked me back to the bottom. Okay, so when we're looking at the archives resources, you have the History Hub here, And it really, so many things. I don't even know where to start, but yes, historyhub.history.gov. This is a lesser known resource, but I always like to talk about it because I think the more resources we have, the better research that we do in fact checking our records and adding to our records. I always tell people like you can use multiple sources to fact check because some sites may have this little bit of information and then you find another website and it may confirm what you already know or it may raise additional questions. So it's always good to, check yourself here. And so it talks about seeking the origins of 40 acres and a mule and what does this mean? And this is more of a blog type of response, but if as you can see, there are more information. Let me go back and have finding slaves and slave owners. So this is kind of look at this as like a Reddit almost. It's not the most real. It's not the most academic. I'm not gonna say reliable because again, any information is good. But if you kind of go through, you if you see anything that sparks your interest, look more into that. Okay. So we have that. I'm gonna exit out of here and go back to our main page. And so let's go to African American slavery and international slave trade. And international slave trade, we rarely hear that in the same sentence. So for me as a researcher, I always look at the language that is being used because sometimes words are being used interchangeably and other times I'm looking at, I rarely hear this part of the story. Or when things are plural that we normally talk about as not being plural. All right, so records relating to American slavery and the international slave trade as the repository of the permanently valuable non-concurrent records of the federal government and the National Archive Records Administration only holds records that were generated by the various agencies and institutions of the United States government or form activities that were under direct federal jurisdiction during the antebellum period. Slaveholding and slave trading were officially considered matters of private property and private enterprise and were not under the direct jurisdiction or regulation of any agency of the federal government outside of the legislation prohibiting the transatlantic importation after 1808. Consequently, most records relating to slavery and slaveholders are held at local and state repositories, not at the National Archives. So, see, even reading this, you get a little bit of like some information. So, if you want to know more about your enslaved ancestors, it's telling you to go here, right? And why? Because it was private. It's a private business, and they didn't really have regulations then outside of like federal laws, right? Okay. So keep in mind that legally, in parentheses, the enslaved were considered part of their owner's property and among the records of the estate and business transactions of the owners. So researchers of individuals who were enslaved must determine where various property records of the owners are held. These types of records are usually held on the county level in each state. The relevant documentation typically consists of items such as probate records, vital records, tax records, and other types of documents found in the court order books and county deed books such as bill of sales, deeds of gifts, mortgages, records of importation, and manumissions. Once you identify the location of the owner's records, you will be able to find whatever documentation exists on the subjects you are researching. Okay? The records at the National Archives that relate to the formerly enslaved and former slave holders are mainly from the years of the Civil War and Reconstruction. So 1861 through 1877, these were the years that the federal government had its most direct contact with the formerly enslaved and slaveholders. These records consist primarily of military records documenting formerly enslaved soldiers and sailors serving in the U.S. colored troops or the Union Navy. The records of the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, which we talked about in an earlier video. If you haven't already, check that out. Um, that assist the formerly enslaved during Reconstruction, the records of the Freedmen's Savings Trust Company, known as the Freedmen's Bank, and the record of the Commissioners of Claims, the Southern Claims Commission. None of these records are directly related to the sale and holding of slaves during the antebellum time, although they can sometimes reveal information pertaining to those matters. Other than the Civil War and Reconstruction era records mentioned above, the other records that provide some personal detail on slave and slaveholders are the records of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia relating to slaves, 1850 to 1863. Record Group 21 and um, 217. Hmm. These records pertain only to the enslaved and slaveholders in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding areas of Maryland and Virginia between the years of 1851 and 1863. Most of these records have been digitized and are now available on genealogy websites such as Family Search, Fold3, and Ancestry. The records referenced in this page highlight some of the records pertaining to slavery that are available at National Archives. Okay, so this is pretty much telling us that, yeah, there's records, but we don't have them. Not that we don't have them, but on the national level, they don't have everything. And what they do have, and what has been digitized specifically during the Civil War and Reconstruction eras, they are already been uploaded on different genealogical websites. And so there's some different language. So I always want to point these parts out because, again, in the previous video, we talked about the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands. Um, but please know that that's different from the Freedmen's Bank. And the Freedmen's Bank was once called Freeman Saving Trust and Company. Again, I want to point these things out because sometimes when things change a name, um, it sort of it may lose some of the history behind it because now it's this new name, it has a new identity, and some folks, if you were not around or you don't know, you may not associate the two together. So I always want to bring that part back and just reassociate, like, hey, this is what this used to mean, this is what this was once called, and they are the same things. All right, because again, in a previous video, I talked about how Black Americans are racial categories. The names of those have been changed so much throughout history. And if you weren't born in a certain era, you wouldn't know that folks were called a Negro and Negroes on birth certificates because we have disassociated ourselves so much from that term that you don't even think, like, oh, wait, maybe on my parents, even my grandparents or my great grandparents, their names, that's how they were identified. So I do this again for multiple reasons, just to bring awareness and make sure that, we are looking at things consistently. They have an image here of an anti-slavery fair um, invitation from 1846. You are respectfully solicited in the name of humanity to attend an anti-slavery fair to be held at Marshall Schoolroom on New Year's Day, commencing at 10 a.m. A great variety of fancy and useful articles will be offered for sale. I need to zoom in, baby. There we go. Can be accommodated and the proceeds of which are to be appropriated to the cause of the slave. December 14th, Salem as sewing circle. Come help break the captive's chain. Interesting. Okay. I don't know why I did that to myself, y'all. I was really trying to squint down and read that thing. All right. So also again, we have different types of records here. You have congressional records, civilian records, military records, as well as judicial records. So again, I know y'all probably like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff here, but that's the point. We can't say that we don't know our family history if we're not going to go out and look for it, right? If it was going to be so easy for us to find it and for us to retrieve it, we wouldn't have to retrieve it. It would just be given, right? And so sometimes with genealogy, you may go down a rabbit hole, but the rabbit hole is so fun because, again, it lets you know that there's more information out there than we are often taught. And then you can draw and make your own, come up with your own meaning. I went back to the main page and now we're on the Black Power. I'm not going to get into that at the moment because I want to stay focused on just providing resources. But as you know, it's there. They also have information on migration and the Black experience here. You can talk about like the Western expansion, the Freedmen's Bureau, labor, the first Great Migration, and then the second one, or I don't know why they split it up like that, but I guess this is a 30-year time frame. This is a 60-year time frame. They talk about the Red Summer, and as you can see, more resources here. Rediscovering Black history. This is another blog here, and so again, if you want to talk more about migrations, this would be a great website. And then race riots, the Red Summer, which is here, and then they have videos. They're over 10 years old. However, um, information is still information. So please review all that you can. And then let's see. All right, archives, library, information center, and they have other resources for Black history. So they have general collection, they have the national resources or research. They have federal sites, non-federal sites. Then there's specific history. Like it just keeps going, y'all. They have a preservation project here that you can look forward to. Some federal sites include African American Heritage, African American Mosaic, the Odyssey, and then of course you have Afro American Genealogical Research. And yeah, so here's other resources, and then these are the non-federal websites. This is African American Biographical Database. There's also African American History, the Digital Library, Oral History Collection. Y'all, it's so much information. So much information. And I'm still scrolling. You see some of the early green books. Then it started talking about state, regional, and local research. So for those in Ohio, um, you have some in the Milwaukee area, Black Archives of Mid America. So this is around, and it's so funny because I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. And the more I do genealogy research, the more I learn about the city that I lived in for all my life, way beyond the majority of my life. I cannot believe like I didn't know any of this. And I was surrounded by melanated people my whole life, and we were so focused on ancient Africa and ancient times that we forgot about what was in our own backyard. And so I definitely encourage you all to start learning what's already available in your areas. What resources do your libraries have to offer? Where are the some of the genealogical research areas and small businesses and all those things around? There's so many things here. Okay, so we talked about Black Archives of Mid America, documenting the American South, Missouri's African American history. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes I just have to laugh. And it really talks about the Dred Scott case. I will do a video on that as well, because we need to understand what is a 14th Amendment. Wow, slow down. 14th Amendment citizen, and what does that mean? And just give more details into the Dred Scott case. You have National Archives for Black Women's History, Race and Place, African American Community Histories, and then you have stuff with New York. Then we have our military, so Black Americans in the U.S. Army, Black men in Navy Blue during the Civil War, Black Wings, Black American pioneer aviators, um, Union intelligence. It keeps going. So another reason, I know at the beginning I talked about using the term Black American, but this is why our history on in the United States is very different than any other melanated Black group and every other. I hate using POC, but I have to use it for this, and every other so-called POC, right? Y'all don't have the same historical connection to the United States like we do. Like we fought in every war, as you can see. There's different, just different experience. So that's why I wanted to focus specifically on Black Americans, um, especially during certain parts of our nation's history, because a lot of immigration wasn't happening at that time. A lot of melanated immigration wasn't happening at that time. So I just want to make that case. It's not a divisive thing. It's none of that. It's just it's okay to talk about a specific ethnic group. You know, everybody has their own story, collectively and individually, and as a collective, we are trying to understand our culture and our impact on not only just the United States but the world, and just rebuilding some of our confidence as a people and knowing who we are, because the more we know who we are, the less people can tell us who we are, right? All right, so again, just so many resources, and I clicked on something and it can't open. Okay, gonna move on. And then here are the public programs. What happened to it? Public programs and online exhibits. So they do have a YouTube channel, and it talks about they have a genealogy series, and this is what 3 years ago. But check that out, learn more. Um, talk about Black college life, Civil Rights Act of 1964, amending America, civil rights and individual freedom. And again, you could just continue to see all the resources allotted here. And then here's like a frequently asked question, but it says, what are people asking about Black American records on History Hub? They're seeking photos, records, anything. Um, this is specifically in Indiana. More like slave records, Louisiana slave records, Tuskegee enrollment, a surname, and there's more. So you can see if you can ask a research question and see who responds. So this could be a great community when you think about it. When you say if you hit a roadblock in your research, maybe come here and go to the History Hub and ask a question and see who responds. I think that's important. But yeah, let's. What else is on this page that we haven't looked at? What other block? Okay, we already looked at this. And that is it, y'all. Alrighty. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your time. And I know this video was a little bit longer, but we got to get into it because this is a journey. This is our history. Again, we have to be the authors and the creators of our stories and not keep it in the hands of others. So, thank you all. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.